So we wanted to start our little section here on the Night of Sense. And let's have a little reading. I'll do a little reading from Father Thomas's book, Invitation to Love. The Night of Sense is about dismantling our immature programs for happiness, which can't possibly work in adult life. Little do we realize when we embark on the spiritual journey that our first fervor is itself immature and under the influence of these programs. It will have some growing up to do. Thus, at some point in our journey, a pervasive sense of God's absence begins to manifest itself during prayer and spreads into our area of our life. This is actually the beginning of a deeper union with Christ. Most of us, however, do not experience it that way. When the biblical desert opens up within us, we worry that something is going wrong in our relationship with God. So to reassure us, we'll just have this short little reading from Isaiah. Remember these things. I formed you, I shall not forget you.
Well, good morning, Gail. This process of the dark nights, as they are called, begins in that inner room with the divine therapy, and that it was actually a series of movements and the undercurrent of the whole spiritual journey, so to speak, that begins with an invitation from God and eventually allows us to be God with us. So it is an ongoing process, and as you noted, the Night of Sense, when we're in it, may not look like a profound invitation from God, but it leads, to deep healing and purification of our motivations and our hearts, into all of the other fruits that were given by the Spirit. I myself think of it as illuminations in the soul by God. The Night of Sense is about freedom from our egoic self and a movement towards freedom in God. And this begins with self-knowledge. Nothing perhaps is more helpful, but perhaps more painful than seeing our own pride in action and being able to see this almost in the third person. I remember one of my own early signs when I did see myself almost as a third person, and I experienced it as an emptiness and a lack of satisfaction with all that I was and all of the worldly things and accomplishments that had been given to me, as well as aridity and anything that might be approaching prayer or daily life or any kind of devotional aspect without any consolation. So that's how my own experience began of perhaps the very first of the dark nights.
That's interesting because I realized I had a similar experience in that, and I suppose it's an earmark of going deeper. The God I knew was gone, and I didn't feel anything or I didn't know anything anymore, and I didn't seem to fit in with the rest of the people, with my peers and my family members. I thought I felt separated in a certain kind of way. And I felt really kind of perplexed, and I was having I would call it suffering. I was suffering internally in a way because of the losses, I guess, I was experiencing both of God, of my friends, of myself. And I remember sharing this with this very wise man, and he said to me, once you find God in suffering, you'll never lose him again. And in darkness. And I think I've never forgotten it. I carry it with me. So when things are going a little askew in one way or the other, I remember that God is with me because of that statement. So that was a real help to me. And it's sort of that, goes after that reading, I formed you, I will never forget you. And in fact, I will never forget God, because the darkness is now a representation of him in some ways to me, because I figure, well, we must be going deeper at this particular point in time, and I'm more willing. I recognize it a little more, I guess.
Well, I think that's perhaps what I've grown to understand over time, that the difference between outright depression and being in a dark night is an intuition that the trial is going someplace and that God is with us. Whereas a depression period may be one where one is unable to function really at a normal level of functioning, and everything seems bleak and dark. Whereas there is a certain assurance. Father Thomas talks about the assurance could be that the dark nights actually represent in St. John of the Cross's mind like the starry nights, that these little stars are twinkling behind the darkness or through the darkness, and they exist. So depression can be a self-absorption. It's sometimes severe when our world seems to collapse, whereas an awareness of being in the dark night, however vague it may be, is some assurance, even deep inside of us, that God is there with us. God is with me throughout this trial.
So there's always a sparkle of light. As you said, God is illuminating your soul or your heart and soul, and that isn't recognizable right away. So those little teeny illuminations are things that, God is kind of boring through us in a way to open that space for more God and more grace and more things to flow. And we're letting go of things that are not kind of in the way of the free flow of grace and of our of allowing love to really flow through us.
So the struggle that might be going on within us, an important thing that we can tell our friends who are listening is not to become discouraged, to think that there is something wrong, that we're doing something wrong, that we are offending God, even if we question God, if we that we should abandon the spiritual journey, that it's for somebody else, that I have things to do, I have a family, I have responsibilities, I can't deal with this in my life, it belongs to someone else. So I think it's to keep going, and that, and to assure ourselves, if you will, through the grace of God, I won't give up, and I resolve for the love of Christ and the love of God to go through this desert no matter what. And this kind of inner orientation and commitment allows the work of the Night of Sense, which we're talking about today, to do its work and to complete it for this point in time. And we might also emphasize that, again, as Father Thomas had mentioned, because we're living so much longer today than it used to be, that the dark nights are not a one-time event. That they may be thought of as kind of transitional periods on the spiral staircase, if you will, and that we could go through many of these as our props, if you will, internally and externally, of how we craft our lives are one by one dismantled, inwardly and outwardly.
Yeah, I think we just make the commitment to take ourselves to our prayer chair every morning and just sit down and do it. The whole idea of practice is we practice every day, and we make the commitment to practice every day. And it's not about sitting down and feeling good. It's about sitting down and deepening our relationship with God for the 20 minutes. So we just take ourselves and do that. and in faith believe that this is what we're doing. Even if it doesn't feel comfortable or right, we do it anyway. And in fact, I think it's John of the Cross that says when your life is busy and you feel discouraged, don't do less prayer, do more. So if you could add a few more minutes, just sit down and then take yourself back to your chair in the afternoon or early evening and do your practice. And just get up from there, not trying to figure out what happened in the inner room or not trying to understand what's going on per se, but just go about your life and allow your life to show you markers about where you are in your relationship with God and others, and it'll be an interesting experience. But not to hold on to the time of prayer as like the place where you and God are working on something. It's just an opening so that God can do the work, and it really is kind of a break. I remember one time Father Thomas said to me, I don't know, I said something about doing my centering prayer, and he said to me, well, that's kind of like a vacation from yourself. And you just sit down, and it's like a relief. So that was good. Another good tip for me and kind of helpful, a vacation from myself, a vacation from that constant inner chatter.
What about spiritual direction during this time, and or spiritual companions, particularly during the dark night? Do you have any
I think
thoughts?
That's a great idea if you have spiritual companions, and also to share it in your centering prayer group if you have one, or if you have a close friend to talk with them, because I think those are the kinds of things you need from others, is an encouragement to continue, to keep it going. And I remember talking with a good friend. I was getting a little discouraged, and I said something to them, and they said, well, my dear, you've hit a gold mine, and this is evidence that your prayer is taking hold.
Even, the community of companions on the way, like on this course, I think is very important. Knowing that others are going through either periods of trial or questioning or seeking, and that we have this community of hundreds of people around the world with an intention to God. To me, that is so exhilarating, both for myself and the world, that those who are traveling with me, and actually we don't even have to say anything, just knowing that we're there on the way together is motivating in and of itself, actually.
I would agree that we're all companioning one another. And when you go in the practice circle of the Course and you hear some of the things that people are experiencing and how encouraging others are, they'll right away say, oh, keep on going, or yes, or I understand, or whatever it is. But there's a whole bunch of encouragement, and I'll pray with you about this intention, whatever it is. But it makes you really have a tangible experience of knowing that others are walking this journey with you. And, the journey of Lent is about, the way of the cross and what that means. But I think we always think of you may want to think of the dark part of it, that, you're suffering, you're dying, you're getting buried. But remember, the resurrection is all part of it, too, and the ascension. So here you are, you're moving through this. It's kind of like almost like a roller coaster in some ways. You go down and then you move up. So it's a spiraling down, but as you let go in the spiraling down, then the inner resurrection spirals up, and that grace of God supports you even more. So it's making space for the love of God. And I think once you kind of really not only know it with your head, but know it with your heart, then you're encouraged by this. And, this is on the sensible level, the night of sense. The psychological level is being purified from your egoic attachments that aren't really serving you anymore. It's like trying to wear a dress that fit you when you were 5 years old.
Yes. So I think we can maybe just remind ourselves that this process is initiated by God, that it is the work of the Spirit, and it's all part of a process. And we're in the desert, yes. We affirm that we're there, and we're on the way, and God is with us, and we're not alone.
Yes, that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. You're not alone interiorly, because the presence of God lives and dwells within you, and exteriorly there are companions on the journey who are all experiencing similar things. So I think I hope those words of encouragement are helpful, and a deeper understanding, both intellectually and intuitively, people are able to really know a little bit more about the process. So I have another little reading from Invitation to Love that we can close with, and I think it really affirms what we've been saying. The Night of Sense enables us to face our distorted views of God and to lay them aside. Then we are free to relate to God as He is, and to use the immense energy that this freedom releases to relate to others with respect and love. One way God deals with the limits we have of relating to Him is by reducing our concepts of Him to silence. As resting in God is contemplative practice becomes habitual, we spontaneously disidentify with our emotional programs for happiness and our cultural conditioning. Already we are meeting God at a deeper level. In time, we will grow from the reflective relationship with God to one of communion. The latter is a being-to-being, presence-to-presence relationship, which is the knowledge of God in pure faith.
That's beautiful. May it be so for us.
Today and always. Amen.
Amen.